Hey guys, how you doing? This is Craig here from Bass Lessons Melbourne, and for today's player profile interview I'm joined by Mr. Jonathan Dimond. So,
hi Craig.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you around and to have this ginormous bass with you as well.
It looks big when it's on someone else, if you know what I mean. But for me, yeah, it's just part of my body by now.
Yeah,
but
really?
Yeah, like, you know, if my wife picks up my instrument or someone else, not that I let them, it's like, gee, that's quite a big instrument.
Well, it was too big to even fit in my...
It didn't fit in your stand.
In the stand?
That's right. So, yeah, I don't know. You get used to these things. I've been playing this for so long, I've even forgotten about it. 91 I got this. So.
91?
Yeah.
Was that one of the early...
This is an early, before they got famous Warwick, before they got mass-produced Warwick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Did you have to sell some organs?
I had to do a lot of gigs, and I remember paying for the instrument. I'm not a gearhead, actually, so it's kind of a weird thing to be talking about it, but it's a fine topic.
It's here.
And it's here, but it has a history, and it's I guess it's related to me.
Yeah.
It cost me $5,400 in 1991.
Wow.
I ordered it from Germany via New Zealand, which was the importer was through there, and actually through Michael Zachariah helped me with that.
Right.
Who's of course a Melbourneite, and I'm not a Melbourneite. I was living in Brisbane at the time. So yeah, it was a lot of gigs paid for this.
And how long did you have to wait for it?
About 12 months.
Back in the day, huh?
Back in the day when, you know, you had to pre-order LPs and that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's interesting, because I'm sure a lot of people have been through that process of seeing a bass in a magazine or seeing somebody play it on a video or something, like being like, that's the bass for me.
Yeah.
But if you've never actually played it,
it's a weird thing.
It can be, it's a bit of a gamble.
It is a gamble.
I know friends who have ordered custom basses and stuff like that and got it and been like, nah, it's not actually, it's not for me. So
yeah. How
did you know that this was what
I was lucky on this occasion.
Okay.
I was young and naive. And the inspiration for this particular instrument was John Patitucci, who remains one of my exemplars of the instrument.
What is it actually, sorry?
This is a Warwick neck through thumb bass.
Warwick neck through thumb.
Yeah, so if you look at the back of it, you know, it's got the 7 pieces all the way through. Yeah. It's not bolt on. There's nothing wrong with that. I've got another Warwick that is bolt on.
Yeah.
And I was attracted to the six-string playing of John Patitucci. Of course, I saw the Chick Corea Electric Band. All of that was highly inspirational as a young, budding, sort of Jacko modelled fretless 4-string player. So my older bass is a Fender Jazz fretless.
Right.
So my first instrument, you'd say. And I still have it. I would have bought it today, but there's not enough room in your studio. You've got 7 other basses here. So I pre-ordered this from the catalogue and from its reputation and from the sound, really. And I'd never played one. And I took, do you know Gavin Pearce?
Yeah. Gavin
Pearce and I both basically learnt bass together in the Con in Brisbane.
Right.
And he was a major on the instrument. I was playing trombone in the classical degree at that time. But we played bass together, did duets, and compared transcriptions and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So he's an early inspiration as well, I suppose, because we learnt together.
Yeah. A bit of friendly competition.
Bit of friendly competition never goes astray, especially in an institution. So because he knows so much about the technical side of the instrument, I brought him out to unbox the thing at the store at the time. So it's like, oh, where is it over there? Unpackage the thing. And he checked it out and he gave it a bill of health, which was
Thumbs
good.
Up, like
Thumbs up, but then I put my thumbs in between the strings and didn't know quite how to really come to terms with the instrument being a 4-string player.
Yeah, I mean, going from 4-string fretless to 6-string Warwick thumb, you weren't into making life easy for yourself, were you?
No, I kind of do that. It's a habit of mine in life. But I just take it along to, rehearsals and ultimately to gigs, and I'd sort of do a bit of doubling, so to speak, on fretless 4-string and then I'd bring this one out for certain things. These are kind of jazz gigs, mostly where the fretless 4 really is in its 4, but also contemporary jazz stuff that I was writing.
Yeah.
And I started writing for the instrument, and gradually, got to know it. Still working on it, of course. It's a lifelong thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also, I still work on the fretless 4-string. I do Indian music on that and various other things. So that's kind of the story of the instrument. It was a gamble. It paid off. I think it's a wonderful instrument.
If you've had it since 1991.
Well, I keep on trying to buy another instrument, and I can't find anything that compares. And so that's, I think, a good sign.
Absolutely.
It's well made. I mean, it's travelled through negative 35-degree snowstorms in Boston to Brisbane humidity. It's done everything I could think to it, and it's survived. Not only survived, but I actually think it's matured a bit.
I'm sure it feels like home.
Yeah. But the wood, is matured. It's better.
What
all
is
the oil that's gone into the wenge and the babinga is African hardwoods. It actually looks better than what it looked like in the catalogue when I purchased it.
But that's always a plus.
Yeah. Apart from a couple of dings in the end, but
that's
no one could see those.
No, mojo.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we just hear a little bit of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the feature about the neck through design, of course, is the fact it sings. And for a sort of a fairly soloistic budding jazz bass player, that was a good feature, that I could play singing tenor melodies that I might have ordinarily played, on my trombone. You can do double stops and chords and, jump between kind of the almost sub-audio range that, of course, the 5-string gives you, to these other sort of sonorities. So it's got a terrific sustain. It's still got a unique kind of attack. It's certainly not lacking in that department, but it's quite different to the bolt-on. So the irony about this instrument is it's called a thumb bass.
Yeah.
Yet my Fender Jazz fretless is a better slap instrument.
Right.
Yeah. So I never really slap on this instrument very much. It doesn't lend itself to that kind of sound. The bolt-on performs much better. A wider string spacing performs much better.
Shorter scale length, I think.
Yeah. So, all those things. For me, this made it a very versatile instrument for what I was doing.
Yeah.
Contemporary jazz. I started training in Indian music. Being the bass player in a band where there's no guitarist or pianist, it gave me that ability to cross between, chordal and sort of functional bass kind of roles.
Yeah.
Its unique singing nature for soloing and also still with as I said, a kind of a unique kind of morphology in its attack. Of course, still to play bass and bass lines. So, it's still got, plenty of grunt. No one's ever said it doesn't have enough grunt.
Sure.
Yeah.
Those pickups slightly angled?
They are slightly angled, yeah.
Right. I think we maybe made them more so in recent years.
I saw the second iteration of this instrument, like when Warwick did become, where it changed from the sound of wood, which is their original slogan back in the early 90s, to bass amps and rock and roll, I think, is their current slogan. So they sell more instruments now. Yeah. But back when they were the sound of wood, no, I think the next version of the instrument, which under the new slogan, actually had the same angling of the humbuckers. But they did make some design changes, and in some cases some improvements, as they do, all companies do. Add particular things, take other things away. Yeah. Change this or that. Yeah. Yeah. As I guess people that tinker with instruments do.
So you spent most of your kind of musical upbringing in Brisbane?
Yeah, I grew up in Brisbane from age of 5, trombonist from an early age, composer, arranger, and sort of like...
Trombone from the age of 5, that seems quite a tough instrument for a 5-year-old.
Beg your pardon, I was composing from that early age.
Okay.
Playing recorder like every other school kid, but formally trombone from 8.
Wow.
Yeah. I started with everything pretty early. Yeah. I was playing professionally when I was 12. in big bands with
was that
trombone.
because you were just super into it, or was it?
I was just super into it.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with talent. I'm not saying. No, it's not.
No, but it could have been like a parental push, or
Not at all. My parents listened to music, Welsh choirs and whatever else was on the radio.
brass bands.
Yeah, not so much. I joined the municipal concert band in Brisbane as a trombonist. No, it was. I guess it was a variety of things, and also kind of an internal motivation because I had a connection with music. My older sister, my only sister, she's older, 3 years older, played clarinet. I guess this was the fortuitous thing that in my elementary school, in my primary school, we call it here, to get into music you had to be, it was very competitive. You had to be at the top of your grades, and you had to, basically it was a competition
Right.
to get in. And the music students had this particular kind of attention, revere from other students and teachers and parents and all that sort of thing.
The elite.
Yeah, I guess in a sense, I guess there are music schools, there are sports schools. I guess this was a kind of a more of a music school.
This was in Brisbane.
This was in Brisbane, and the music teachers were most excellent. So I had a good inspiration to get into the music department. I wanted to play drums actually, like any 8-year-old boy.
Sure.
But I was given the trombone just because there were more trombones than drum kits. Looking back on it, that was a good thing because trombones taught me a lot over the years about music.
Sure.
Most of what I know from the trombone. Being inside ensembles, you learn a lot from being right in the guts of from instrumental section. Having to produce the sound yourself rather than being sort of inbuilt like the piano, and having to intonate like the violin.
I was going to say, that transition from trombone to fretless might not have been quite so daunting.
No, it wasn't. It didn't take very long. Didn't take long to be a beginner. No, it was pretty quick. So those things influenced me very much, and I just practiced a lot. I just practiced whenever I could.
Yeah.
A kid in school had to keep logs of how much they practiced, and you must meet 20 minutes a day or whatever.
Your mum has to sign it off.
Yeah. I would do 2 hours. Mum would just say, just forge my signature. Don't worry about it anymore. You're doing. There's never a problem in that department.
Yeah.
So I love practicing. I know that makes me extraordinarily weird, I suppose, but I don't have enough time to practice.
Wow.
And I'm of the belief that the more you know there is to practice. And so, life balances, family, work.
Do you feel like there's more things that you want to delve into now than 10 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. So looking forward to retirement. So I can practice more. But
to what end?
To what end?
I mean, if you're retired.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is like the music and the practicing is not necessarily. It's not just a career and a thing. It's just who you are and what you do.
Yeah, that's right. It's a continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Right? Music is scientifically proven. Develops your brain. Your brain actually grows with it. And of course, studies have also been made for youngsters and the improvements it has with everything from social interactions to mathematics and whatever. That's all known.
Yeah.
But for an old man like me, it's the joy of continuous improvement, problem solving, setting up challenges, keeping mind body healthy, I suppose. And I do that through a lot of it through music.
Yeah.
I compose, so I write works that challenge myself and put me in ensembles with others. Of course, this is not a lonesome task. I like improving with other people at the same time.
Sure.
So playing with a band, of course, is a wonderful, a wonderful gift.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that hopefully you can keep doing until the end.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I've seen I saw Ustad Al-Raka, who's a famous tabla player, on his 80th birthday. No joke, it was like seeing a baby. That amount of inquisitiveness and liveliness and discovery. Sure. And his hands were soft and agile.
Yeah.
And it's quite a different story to what we see so much in the news today about, getting older is basically just entropy and just dying,
Yeah.
People crumpling, not being able to move, not being able to hold themselves up, the inactivity of mind with dementia as well, and all those things. I know there's some medical causes for some of these things too, but when I think about practice, I don't just think about running scales in my studio at home by myself. Which is why when I wrote a method book on bass about practice, I called it Bass Riyaz, and Riyaz is a sort of all-encompassing term from India, which means practice in a kind of a integrative and holistic kind of total way.
Okay. That seems like quite a huge theme to fit into a book.
Well, that's why the book looks like this.
Right.
There's
a few pages in there.
There's a few pages there, and look, I wrote that a long time ago, and it's just to support my own teaching.
Yeah.
I started writing in India, obviously, so that's where some of the sort of philosophies sort of started germinating. If I had time, I'd rewrite the third edition to a fourth or fifth now, but I'm writing a PhD at the moment, and I've got a year left, so I've got my fair share of writing.
One thing at a time.
This can wait another few years.
Yeah.
I did start writing another book, actually on the topic of books, just solely about rhythm, and sort of I called it Internalizing Time, and it was just to try and, a bit like this, to document my discoveries at the time and help me with my own teaching.
Sure.
And sort of help teach me how to teach,
mm-hmm.
and make a systematic pedagogy out of contemporary rhythm training.
Cool.
But that's also behind the PhD at the moment, and that won't see the light of day until that's finished.
Well, let's rewind a little bit and talk about picking up the bass at, what did you say, 12?
No, I was still a trombonist then. I didn't pick up bass actually until late. I think I was in grade 10, which makes me about 15 or so at that point. So I was already performing professionally on trombone,
right?
But discovered the electric bass sounds really through Jaco Pastorius.
Okay, so that was the
thing. Yeah, I can definitely say that. And
who turned you on to that? How did you discover him?
Oh, look, I was playing in big bands and jazz bands, by night, and
the Chicken.
All those sorts of things. His solo album, and then Invitation. The Live in Japan album still remains an awesome, piece that everyone should have in the library. Both from a arranger's perspective, because I was writing also, of course, this time, and I was writing for various ensembles, including big band. It's got very good examples of writing for the jazz orchestra.
Yeah.
In those albums collectively, but I'm thinking about Invitation particularly right now. Did
you know if Jaco did all the arranging and stuff himself?
I'm not so sure that he did. I think he had help. Yeah. I can kind of hear a bit of imprints of various people, but I'm not qualified to say on record that it's this person or that person.
Yeah.
But if it was all him, I wouldn't be surprised, because he was so musical.
True. Yeah.
And he'd lived with those bands and with horns and R&B ensembles for so long and so obsessively.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't doubt that he could write like that.
Probably, yeah.
So.
And who best to know how to arrange that kind of material than him?
Yeah, exactly. And we all have inspirations and guides and mentors, and
Yeah.
You've got Herbie Hancock playing in your ensemble. That's got to have an effect, hasn't it?
I guess so. Yeah. The piano part. I mean, you wouldn't even write a piano part, would you?
You wouldn't dare.
No.
Don't tell me what to play.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I'm sure he would be wonderfully collaborative.
Yeah. So yeah, you're on the fretless, and you're playing improvised music, because it seems like up until this point you're mainly doing orchestral or written kind of things. Where did the improvisation thing kick in?
I was interested in jazz from an early age.
Okay.
My dad liked jazz. He's got a huge library of LPs of the jazz masters, from Louis Armstrong through Sarah Vaughan through. He's really big into the MJQ, the Modern Jazz Quartet.
Yep.
So that kind of chamber jazz, that European sound as well. So I was influenced by all of that. I had particular people in my bands that also influenced me to introduce me to a lot of other sounds, like the ECM sound, and particular key artists that record on that label. I could list them all, but you know who they would be. But it's a lot of them are not bass players. You know?
Sure.
And Eberhard Weber, of course, you know, is one that I can name. But a lot of the recording artists, yeah, I don't really. If they play saxophone, it doesn't make any difference to me. You know.
Jan Garbarek and
Yeah, all those people. You know,
Yeah.
so there's a particular aesthetic in Jan Garbarek's sound that was appealing.
Sure.
You know, and he studied the Chennai from India, and I've studied North Indian classical music, and I kind of hear those kinds of influences. You
Yeah.
know? So, you know, listening and absorbing all that stuff, I guess I became a kind of a multi-instrumentalist composer. And no, I wasn't doing so much orchestral stuff. In fact, as a trombonist, you know, the one thing you get really good at in an orchestra, of course, is counting bars rest. And I wanted to put myself in the center of the action. And even as a bass player, you know, step on some saxophone toes, you know, in terms of sharing melodic role and all that kind of thing, or having ensemble without a chord player, as I mentioned before. So what I was doing was I was doing a classical trombone performance degree. So I did that for 4 years. But by night, I'd be a jazz contemporary kind of player, playing in big bands. I've played a lot of cabaret, all the shows that used to be so abundant at that time. We're talking late 80s, early 90s. I had four gigs a week, and that was a normal week. Could be more.
Yeah, well.
So that's ultimately that's the income from that I saved to go to America, and that's what I did once I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to New England Conservatory, did my postgrad there in Boston. It was tremendously influential on where I am now.
Yeah.
Both as a sort of composer, performer, and educator.
So postgrad based in
Boston, United States.
I mean, in terms of
Oh, well, I chose contemporary improvisation, and I mentioned the Melbourne Jazz Quartet before. Gunther Schuller, who's kind of the person that coined the term third stream, back in those early 60s kind of time, when you've got classical and jazz hybrid musicians, you know, playing sort of, you know, classical musicians improvising and jazz musicians, you know, reading, as they would say, fly shit, you know, and the hybrid forms of, you know, highly composed, yet also with improvisatory sections in. Yeah. That kind of field of music interested me greatly, and so it's kind of no accident, I suppose, I ended up studying in the town. In fact, the institute, because Gunther was a president of that institute eventually for my postgrad. And in fact, 10 years later, I went back to New England Conservatory to study again. So I've done 2 postgrad degrees there, with a stint in Los Angeles in between, just to kind of be in the industry for a while. So so that until my ultimate return to Brisbane, which was in 2000 and Jesus, I've lost all my timelines now. It's confusing because I moved there twice, LA in between. I came back to Brisbane in 2005, no, I came to Melbourne in 2006. That's when my son was born in Boston. That's right. So I went Brisbane, Boston, postgrad, back to Brisbane, Los Angeles, back to Boston, then to Melbourne. That's the order.
Okay.
It's been a long day. I've just examined like a lot of contemporary scores this morning for assessments. So I've got like, oh my God. It's complicated, but I guess the thing that's inspired me along the way is multiple influences, not just jazz, not just classical, but these hybrid kind of forms. A sort of a specialty in North Indian classical music. I've also spent time in India amongst that, training on tabla, and so the rhythmic forms that come from that style of music, that genre, has been tremendously influential on my composition and my performance on this instrument, as well as, of course, tabla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What drew you to the North Indian thing? Was it just it seems to be you're kind of drawn to stuff with a lot of depth, like where you can really, where it seems like there's no end really to these.
Oh yeah, they're endless. Yeah.
You know, and slightly kind of left of centre genres and practices. It seems to be where you've kind of found your comfort.
Yeah, I'm not a mainstream bass player.
Yeah. I'm sure.
I don't do many top 40 gigs, but I did lots of top 40 gigs on trombone, in horn sections and things. So I've been there, done that on that side of things.
I mean, I'm sure you could.
Oh, if I wanted to, but yeah, certainly. Once again, it was the sound. So I mentioned the sound of Jacko kind of drew me into that world of electric bass and that approach. But the sound of tabla, I mean, literally its sound is very inviting to start with.
Yep.
But then the language, of course, that goes with it, and very strictly is a language, and there's quite a richness and quite a depth behind the language, and to at once kind of be confused, but also know that there's a system behind what seemed to be chaotic in my first listen.
Like jazz.
Just like jazz or anything, actually. Anything that's really completely foreign, but has a history and a very structured and worked out kind of language behind it. Especially when there's more than one person playing at once. I mean, obviously there's something going on. They're hitting things together. How is that happening? So the inquiry began, and coupled with the sort of enchantment of the sound. And this, of course, best happens in live performance, and it was live performance that really clinched it for me. I was like, I have to learn more about this. So in my choosing a postgrad school, I chose New England Conservatory because they have a North Indian classical sort of course in there.
Right, okay.
And ethnomusicology is strong in that town generally. But specifically at NEC, there's a whole body of teachers who actually have a connection back to Pune in India, in North India, which kind of become like a sister town for those people, and that's ultimately where I was sent.
Okay.
Because of that connection with those teachers there. So again, I guess it's looking back on it, it's no mystery now that I ended up in Pune because they were teachers who were trained by teachers in Pune.
How long were you there for?
I only went to India twice, in 96 and 99. I did, I guess you could say, most of my practice in Boston. The study stints in India were grant-funded intensives for one season each. So I went winter and a sort of summer, and I guess my application experience was mostly done in Los Angeles, where there's a huge pool of professional musicians that many have trained at the Aliquippa Khan College in Northern California and have kind of filtered down to other regions of the state. And so there's kind of a network, there are schools, there are gigs, there are people that know the instruments and the music that are interested in contemporary fusions of the classical and other things, and that might want a tabla player for some kind of recording session, or there's a wedding. Or I had a lot of students myself. I was teaching a large number of expatriate Indian musicians, as well as Westerners that have been influenced by Indian culture, generally speaking. So, yeah, a real melting pot in California, of course, and the Indian thing is part of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thinking of the Indian classical thing in America, one name that comes to mind would be Kai Eckhart.
Yeah, right.
Did you ever come cross paths with him? Or?
Not personally. I've seen him play, of course. We've communicated via the internet.
Because he's got Garage Mahal.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Just when you're talking about the fusion and the item, and that's kind of like, in my head, that would be like a kind of Indian LA fusion. Of that kind of. Yeah,
it is a sort of Californian Indian fusion of that. So Kai Eckhart is a wonderful player. Of course, I didn't tell anyone. He's fantastic at all he does. I don't know the extent to which he's studied a classical instrument like myself.
Sure.
So, but he's gleaned a hell of a lot from the style, and of course, they're not trying to be classical musicians. It's something else. It's another new thing. It's a hybrid thing.
Well, just in terms of applying those Indian rhythms and those long forms to bass.
Yeah. He does that.
Like John McLaughlin.
Yeah, John McLaughlin, of course, and of course he's played with him, and McLaughlin's an exemplar of the kind of thing we're talking about.
Yeah. So what would be like an example of how you've taken that time studying tabla and the Indian stuff to how it translates to your playing on the bass?
Well, I mentioned the word language before. The great thing about Indian classical music generally, both North and South, is there's a very specific, organized language of rhythm. I mean pitch as well, but in the rhythmic domain. So whether you learn tabla or not, you can ascribe lingual syllables to each and every sort of rhythmic structure.
Okay.
Yeah? So it is very linguistic. So phrases are broken down into syllables which go together to form combinations that have a relationship to each other, almost like a poetic relationship.
Yeah.
So whereas...
So you've got like letters, words, sentences, paragraphs?
Exactly, yeah. So the reason, I think, or one of the reasons a true Indian classical artist's rhythmic domain appears to be so well mastered is that they're not thinking in little bits. They're thinking in grand structures of related substructures, you know. And furthermore, that there's a rich, i.e. kind of long-standing tradition of compositions and almost formulaic approaches to improvisation that create in themselves a language, you know, a syntax of parts. So, sorry, that's getting a little heavy, but I think that's kind of around where the essence of what we're talking about is.
Okay.
And so to give you an example, whereas teaching a beginner you might be at a loss because you're trying to say, oh, you know, you've got 4/4 and you've got 16th notes and therefore you've got 4 per beat and it's 1 eander, 2 eander, 3 eander, 4 eander, and that tacks on the R of 3. There, they just say, no, it's just a phrase. It's just ta-ta-ga-ta-ga-ta-ga-da. Just ta-ta-ga-ta-ga-ta-ga-da, and you just accent the da, you know. Really, it's just taught by emulation, of course, with oral tradition.
Yeah.
And so you learn these words as syntactic modules that then you start learning how they fit together, sort of in that kind of logic.
Yeah.
And then the improvisation, of course, is reordering the words to start with, and then perhaps, you know, breaking a few rules and then fixing it up later.
Yeah. Wow.
You know. So I've been talking very kind of symbolically, I suppose, how it crosses. But these things have kind of deep-seated changes in how you think about music. Yeah. And then they translate. So I've done gigs with my band Tripitaka, and I remember once the people came to see it, and they came and saw me afterwards and said, we're really expecting Indian music, to hear Indian music, you know. But
can we get our money back?
No, it was quite like that. They enjoyed it, so but didn't hear much Indian influence. And to us, there's a terrific amount of Indian influences. All three of us in the band are trained, you know, in the genre. But the influences are deep, you know, they're beneath the surface. Yeah. So it wasn't just like, it's like a lot of fusion, to be frank, just kind of waves a flag and says, well, you know, I'm playing this lick or line, I'm playing this little artifact that's a cultural marker of that thing, so therefore I'm playing that thing, right? It's just like a token
surface.
Yeah. So, you know, like the coffee ad, let's just chuck in some tabla so it sounds ethnic. I mean, I hate to say those words, but that's kind of what the marketing thinking is. Yeah. They're just like little tokenistic gestures. I mean, the bloody thing is in tune properly. It's a sample or something. It's in the wrong key. And I go, so, you know, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal at all, but all three of us spent a long time. You know, I've been practicing and studying this stuff since I went to NEC in '93. Okay, I'm a beginner. I'm an absolute beginner, right? But that means including practicing classical music and performing with classical musicians and working on what the essence of the thing is. You know, trying to come to terms with that, interpret it in my own, of course, Western white kind of way. Sure. You know, how does it work? And then trying to teach it to others, which, you know, I'm proud to say it makes you better, of course. When you teach, you know, you have to reinterpret it, have new perspectives. You have to be really good at the fundamentals, and then better and better and better. Yeah. So, you know, teaching, of course, is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I guess the biggest influences are the deepest influence because they're the most all-encompassing. Yeah. But then I do write tunes that literally take a tab composition and just set each of the attacks to pitch,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put it on the bass.
Okay.
So it sounds like you want to hear what something like that
Yeah.
sounds like. Is one kind of, not a phrase, a group of phrases
Okay.
that go together to make a statement.
Yep.
Bit rough at the beginning, a bit cold in here.
Do you want me to turn this down a little bit?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The AC cranked.
But that's simply the pitches, of course, weren't just random. They're repetitive in the same way as the rhythmic units were.
Yep.
So when I said the group of 5, da-ti, da-te-te, I played a phrase.
And then again.
Yeah. Da-ti, da-te-te, da-ti, da-te-te. I did it twice. Had a sort of a contour that kind of was like call and response. And then da to kind of round it off. And then I did that 3 times. And the 3 times things itself is very important.
Yeah.
So this kind of holy trinity of repetition, of course, is kind of a universal, I think, across so many musics. You see it in blues.
But also in orators. If you see somebody making a great speech,
yeah,
they'll say the same point 3 times.
yeah, exactly. Maybe with a little tweak just at the end, just
Exactly.
to give you, foil your expectation, right?
Yeah.
So it's an age-old principle that happens in poetry, happens in
Yeah.
all sorts of walks of life and art, and but the 3 times repetition thing, which is called Tihai in the north, Arudi in the south, is a whole field of play. You have this self-similarity where you have 3s within each of the 3s, all sorts of things, all sorts of games you can play.
It almost seems like one of those fractal
it's almost
patterns,
like that.
where it just
Yeah.
it will never end.
Never ending. Yeah, it has a bit of that feeling about it. Yeah. So I guess the other thing about this language is a phrase like the dati date dati date. It's a group of 5. It's not. It doesn't say anything about its division.
You mean where the pulse could be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the kind of there's 2 sides to the same coin, isn't there? If you've got 5 things, they could be divisions of 5 or groups of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you have this word which is dati datete, but depending on how you're conceiving it, it could sound very different.
Mm.
Yeah. Even equally spaced like that.
Yeah.
So I just played it in triplets, right, against the foot. But it could be dati datete dati datete dati datete da, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Which of course is what we call generally a quintuplet.
Yeah.
5 in the time of 4 semiquavers.
Yeah.
Is the understanding.
Or it could be 5 eighth notes that you mentioned.
Yeah, it could be
lines
eighth notes.
up.
It could be, literally could be anything.
Mm.
Yeah. So again, the Indian language contribution to my understanding of temporality is the systematic way that this is worked through without assumption. Yeah. So to give you an insight into my practice routine on this kind of type of thing, I might just start with semiquavers, let's say, and something that feels very 4/4-ish. Yep. So it's very clearly it's 2 bars of 4/4. You might say semiquavers, something like that, and redistribute the accents from where they're harmonically implied. Harmonically implied with, well, we're gravitating towards the downbeat and then the subsidiary beats 2, 3, and 4 at the moment, organising the pitches around there. That's where we're hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can change here. The reason I'm playing this stuff on my foot is because I'm forcing myself to manifest the change. I could just put on a metronome as well, which is far easier actually.
Yeah.
But to control it with my foot, this is a new training thing that I've been doing. Okay, so that puts a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
As does. You can of course enforce all these with accents. So along that same tact, we're talking about equidistant beats. I mean, beats are defined by equal groupings of semiquavers or pulse subdivisions.
Yep.
Just change that up. Okay, so that was just 4s. What do the other ones sound like? Well, the multiples of 2s, of course, all sound somewhat similar and have a different, a similar kind of relationship to the pitch material. And okay, so I didn't play through those, but the odd numbers are going to have some interesting results.
Yeah.
Ah, screwed it up. Screwed up the pattern. Ah, the ending. I was concentrating on what I was doing rather than just going with the sound. 5s. Yeah, of course they're at odds. I have to play several times to make it resolve. 7s. Etc., etc.
So you've kept that exactly the same
For now.
but you've altered the underlying
Beat
pulse.
reference.
Yeah, beat reference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you were to write that out, you could write it out, all in semiquavers, but just change the meter,
Yeah.
or you could change the number of divisions per beat and just call it the other thing. This is the realm of metric modulation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, so the next thing to do, next thing I would work on is different types of foot patterns
Okay.
that weren't just beat around equidistant beats, but more around ostinati. So I might start with, say, the son clave, which is a traditional form that everyone knows, and so that's an easy thing to kind of know if you're getting it wrong. So this kind of thing.
Okay.
And then phase that. Ah. Good. That's a hard one right off then. You get the idea. So now I'm taking something that isn't just equidistant beat-like thing, but it's an ostinato. It's kind of interesting because it's 2 bars long.
Sure.
And dropping it in different places.
Yeah. And I guess one thing that may be good to dig up is what would be the underlying goal for this kind of practice? Just to improve your pulse, or to come up with new compositional ideas or improvisation ideas, or all of the above?
All of the above can happen. Certainly, even the more contemporary Afro-Cuban bands aren't necessarily going to phase their clave. Like, how practical is that, you say? But it's kind of like, well, now I've done the exercise, so to speak. I'm more robust with its usual placement. Its division has become more meaningful to me and it's patterning because I've looked at it from multiple perspectives. Yeah.
Yep.
So that might seem like a very arduous way of getting better at playing 4/4, but it's actually totally necessary.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, run through metronome practices where you have to click on 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the click becomes the E.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the things.
Exactly.
It's a similar principle, right?
You've read my book. So redefining the metronome, as I call it. Yeah, putting it in different places.
Yeah.
And keeping it a creative and active member of your solo band at home is terribly important. You all know the feeling, right? You're playing along and the drummer makes a mistake, maybe drops a beat, something like that, and you're in this quandary, right? Where do you go? And of course there's professional aesthetic kind of considerations in this as well, but from a purely craft point of view, well, are you able to be the rock?
Yeah.
And keep it stable. You will feel that gravity, and that tension between the two things. So it's a thing that we play with a lot in Tripitaka in my band, is multiple layerings of things. We deliberately pit against a common cycle with different interpretations of it, and enjoy the complex of simple things that arises. That's what we play around with a lot. So getting back to this exercise, the next thing I do would be change up the pattern correspondingly. I'd change this, maybe make a 5 version of that.
Okay.
And then keep this in 4,
Right,
and do things that way around as well. So, make a 5-note pattern. Okay, so that's simply in 5. I've got the 5 beat, but so I was doing grips of 3 against 5 there, yeah. So really the sky is the limit with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, the sort of the Indian thing that's happening here is I'm just chucking stuff at you really, but I'm trying to show that there's a systematic approach that you could do. You could devise a pattern, keep it common, change this incrementally, vice versa. And you could think about beat patterns. You could think about accents on this side.
Yeah.
Accents are a wonderful thing, and I toy around with those a lot. I think they make for a really healthy kind of range of control on the instrument. So accent patterns on top of all of this are a really good thing as well.
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously music is many layers to it. You've got your rhythm. You even have harmonic rhythm, the rhythm with which the harmony changes, and melody and stuff like that on the top. So where does your harmonic development kind of come from, or your harmonic voice come from? Is it in any way connected to this, or?
It's a good question. Of course, Indian music is fairly unharmonic from a contemporary perspective. There's nothing happening really. It's modal. It's in fixed key. People play instruments and sing in the same key all their lives.
Which I guess is why there's such a massive rhythmic focus.
Yeah, and melodic focus.
So
if you're including melody in this discussion, I would have to say that certainly the field of raga, of the melodic construction in Indian music, has also been immensely influential in my life since the last 20 years. So, but there's a whole stack of other things too. Again, I grew up listening to jazz, so that language is a very big part of how I express. I'm quite comfortable with chord changes and the kinds of formulas we hear in jazz all the time. But there's other things too. Again, I was classically trained, but also just by nature I was interested in 20th century classical music.
Okay.
So I'm doing my PhD in composition at the moment, and I'm drawing on my lifetime of studying Western European art music, for want of a better word. Some of my biggest influences are the music of Stravinsky, Messiaen, Bela Bartok, it's a big one. but others too, and there's probably too numerous to kind of all
So you're
name.
composing for orchestral ensembles essentially, or I mean,
Well, my focus is intercultural music and contemporary intercultural composition.
right?
So, needless to say, my group Tripitaka has sort of importance there.
Mm.
But my next work, I'm writing a string quartet. So yeah, I'm writing for, you would say, sort of established classical instruments,
Yep.
but as well as hybrid ensembles. Like I wrote a piece for voice and accordion, electric bass, trombone, and trumpet. You know,
Okay.
ensembles that don't really exist otherwise
Yeah.
as
Apart from
archetypes.
apart from in your brain.
Yeah. No, I have no intention of writing for orchestra. You know, it's kind of like playing for orchestra. It's kind of outside my area of interest. I love orchestral music, of course, and I listen to it.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a composer, I've always written music from an early age that I wanted to play. You know, so
Well, I think
being
that makes sense, right? Why would you write something that you wouldn't want to be involved in?
yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know?
and you
I always
learn so
wonder if
much
some
from
of these
that.
composers feel left out when they hand it off and the orchestra goes and plays it, and then it's no longer their thing anymore. I'm sure that it's a completely different feeling. But the idea of going, here's my song, you guys play it. Yeah, it's a little bit strange for me.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly, well, the contemporary way is, you know, we find all the time most performers that define their voice creatively end up writing something, you know, as a part of that expression of it.
Yeah.
And I see it as a teacher of, you know, tertiary students all the time as, you know, the contemporary hybrid multi-instrumentalist performer, composer, songwriter is, well, there's one every second street, you know.
Yeah.
It's the way today.
But also I think composition is, for me anyway, it was just a kind of a natural thing that happened because I was fascinated with my instrument and I was exploring it, you know, and I would find new sounds and I would play it over and over, and eventually you come up with some kind of composition, you know, be it 4 bars or an entire piece. And I think if you're that kind of dedicated to your instrument and practicing, you will end up composing anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And improvisation, you could chuck into that sentence too, probably. You know, if you're toying around with ideas.
Yeah, you're improvising and then it becomes a rep.
Yeah, and, you know, some people call improvisation sort of spontaneous composition and all of that sort of thing. But composition, you know, I notate. Now that's how I've been trained, and that's the kind of music I create.
Sibelius?
I use Sibelius as a tool, but I guess my point was composition doesn't just have to include notation in the Western way.
Okay.
You know, I know plenty of composers, great composers that, you know, again have orally transmitted their work.
Wow.
You know, so that has also happened. So there's all types of composers out there, and one shouldn't see themselves as not that person with the orchestral score and therefore not a composer, because that's not the case.
Yeah. So do you have a body of work? Do you have albums and releases that you've put out there?
Yep, I do. And some are on my website, so I guess you'll be sharing a link about that maybe at the end.
Yeah.
If you're interested, you can find out about me there. But yeah, I'm writing fairly consistently for the bands I play in.
Yeah.
And right now it's Tripitaka and a trio. And
have you recorded with Tripitaka yet?
Yeah, we've got our debut album. Since you mention it,
that was
spontaneous plug. So this is our first album called Yakia, released just this past August.
Cool. It's just a few months old?
Yeah, it's a few months old. It's still warm. It's on the Tall Poppies label, and again, you can find out about it on my website or at tripitaka.net.
Awesome.
So it's got some of my compositions and some of Adrian Sheriff's compositions on it.
Great. Alt Control X.
Yeah, have you used that? I know you're a Mac. Is that a Mac?
Yep.
Yeah, but Alt Control X, that's one of Adrian's compositions. So yeah, there's a lot of humour in the band. Yeah.
Paco
on Paco La Chia, Paco de la Chia.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. And was this a live? I'm assuming you would all just record live in a room.
We recorded live in a room. Yep. There's no kind of multi-tracking.
Sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
Cool. And so can we have a look at this book a little bit?
Oh yeah, bass Riyaz. Yep.
Yep. The practice workbook for the mastery of the 4, 5 and 6 string electric bass guitar.
Yeah, so some dedicated things to
So just a small topic.
Just a small topic, yeah. After that, it's like, yeah. Well, it's my first attempt at a book. And it was to support my teaching. The chapters in there, I conceived this as something that would be okay for beginners, to give them some sort of guidance in that very formative stage before they make bad habits, perhaps.
Yeah.
But also have some professional pointers and things in there. Things that I value about being a professional and organising yourself and interacting with others. This is the Riyaz part, I suppose.
Yeah.
When I set up myself for a gig, I consider like spatial arrangement of things as really part of the performance, and the stage is almost like a sacred thing in a sense. It has to be organised, and you have to feel comfortable there, because you have to perform your best. And hey, you've been practicing X number of months for this gig, and you've got to be at the top of your game. So, I talk about that and health and those sorts of things, but it's mostly about the craft and technique of the bass, despite those chapters. Everything from finding harmonics on a 6-string bass through to motivic development and just soloing on changes.
Cool. Do you touch a little bit on chordal playing and stuff as well?
I do, yep. And once again, the Riyaz way, the Indian way, I've sort of done systematic notation of, all chords and particular categories you can play on the 6th-string bass. And just like the harmonic chart, I suppose, it's meant to be as thorough as I could muster at the time.
Yeah.
It still stands as a reference for me for my own teaching.
For sure.
Despite the fact that I said I'd like to rewrite it. I still think it's a worthy thing, and again, I learned so much by doing it.
Yeah. And I guess, if people are watching this or listening to this and they are beginners, what would be your, words of encouragement or advice? If they might be, wanting to play R&B, they might be wanting to play jazz, they might be wanting to just play some country stuff. What's the fundamental stuff that you reckon all these people should be trying to lock down?
Right. Philosophical time again. So the genres and the styles mean nothing. They make no difference. In fact, you could be playing saxophone too, and I think the universal constants are the same. So if you're embarking on learning an instrument, including the bass, you're going to be learning how to learn, right? Ultimately you're going to be learning how to teach yourself. So you're going to be learning about yourself and your own idiosyncrasies and all that sort of thing. You should be aware that there's a honeymoon period of learning an instrument, let's say, where it's all fun and games and discovery and new, that will roll back eventually. And it will leave you to the hard yards.
Leave you cold and alone.
Exactly, and broke. No, but it's very true. Like the enjoyment that I get from music is only after a lot of suffering. Because practicing is hard work. You're moving into the territory of the unknown.
Yeah, you suck.
You suck. You sound bloody awful. I don't want to listen to this video because that was awful, right? And you have to be failing half the time.
Yeah.
If you're growing, you have to be moving into the unknown. And if you stay within the comfort zone, you will stop learning, probably get frustrated and give up. So it takes a certain kind of attitude and probably a certain kind of teacher to help you through past that honeymoon period I just called. And the reality is, it's delayed gratification. Okay, the rewards are at the end of the miles you have to run. That the more you learn, the more infinite the thing opens up to become. So it's easy to become overwhelmed. Again, if you don't have the right self-guidance or guidance.
especially with the internet at the minute.
Oh, the internet is terrible.
You know,
For
let's
that.
go.
My God, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Terrible but great at the same time. I was joking, you know.
absolutely.
And where was I? So yeah, so you've got to, I guess, be resigned to the fact that these things are inevitable.
Embrace it.
Embrace it, yeah. And because you're working on becoming a performer, you're no different to an athlete or, you know, any number of other people, baseball player, whatever, that is working on themselves, right? And that includes your mind and your body and your emotions and everything at once. It's all together. It's all in there. It'll all come out through your instrument, you know. You'll be a real performer of yourself, ultimately, and all the warts and all. So that's the philosophical kind of side of it. So I guess in saying that, to you beginners, I would say, yeah, find the right kind of people to surround yourself with, not necessarily just a teacher, but also peers. You know, in my youth, I learned a hell of a lot by surrounding myself by people that were better than me.
Yeah.
You know, I was the worst trombone player in the band until I was the best. And then what did I do? I quit that band. I went back into the next band. I was the worst trombonist in the band. You know, and then worked my way up.
Yeah.
And then again and again. So it was always this kind of progression.
Sure.
Yeah. Helped along by people that all had their kind of pearls of wisdom, and they gave me experiences that helped me grow. So, yeah, I guess that's my advice. The inspiration is important. The perspiration is even more, and regularity, of course, is, you know,
Absolutely.
the whole thing about practice routines is a really important thing to kind of master.
Yeah.
And you know, there's plenty to say about how to practice, but certainly the dedicated daily routine of it is important.
Yeah. There's no shortcuts.
There's no shortcuts. No, there's no shortcuts. Yeah.
And also, you know, you get a few students who come who have been playing for maybe 10 years or whatever, and they're just been on a plateau for 9.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I think that's almost more of a difficult place to be in than a clean slate, than somebody who's just coming out, because they've got 9 years of muscle memory and 9 years of all these things that baked in.
So what do you do in that case?
In that case, well, you kind of have to be honest and say, look, there's no shortcut, and it has to be, any practice you do from now on out has to be mindful, concerted practice. You know, if you, and ultimately it comes down with how honest the student is with themselves. I get students who come and then they never come back. You know, I'm sure you've had the same as well.
Yeah, they find it's too hard work.
Well, they come and go, they think that the teacher is going to be the magic fix. They think if they go for a bass lesson, they'll come home and they'll be a better bass player. And all I'm doing is giving you the pots and pans and the recipe book.
It's like you're a supervisor and so.
You know, it's just like, if you're truly committed, if you really want to make that change, as Michael Jackson once said, take a look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, but no, it's true. It's like, if you want to make that change, it's only going to happen with hard work. To unlearn and develop, and the regularity thing is the best way to make that easy, if you know what I mean. Yeah. You know, half an hour a day. Yeah. If people can commit to that, then they'll
if you're working full time and you can manage half an hour a day, I'm sure you can manage half an hour a day.
Exactly. You know, and that left hand thing, after 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, will be
better,
a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, if you can stick it out that long, you'll start to see the rewards and go, oh, okay. Things are. It's like going to the gym. It's like exactly what you're saying about an athlete, or whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like going to the gym. You go every day, great. If you go once a week, you're not really going to make much of a difference, you know. And you know, I definitely need to go more than what I do. But it's that the whole Riyaz thing. It's usually the mental life challenges that hold us back, I think.
Yeah. We see that with people at the top of their games too. I'm thinking about Roger Federer. You know, we saw in Melbourne playing tennis. Yeah. Beating more agile, more youthful tennis greats who are all masters at the top of the game, right?
Faster shredders.
Yeah, but his game is a psychological one.
Yeah.
You know, at that level, it's really the mind games that win.
Because they all know they're playing Roger Federer.
Yeah.
And he uses that to his advantage.
Well, yeah, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So no, it's yeah. You would use the word mindfulness. I know that's a buzzword these days, but there's another one. Yeah, it is. But deliberate practice, you might say.
Deliberate practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So using goals, using the step by steps,
Mm.
and coupled with the sort of regularity and the persistence. Yeah. But if you can find something that, you know, if you're one of those 10-year-old bass players that kind of hitting kind of a blockage like this, then Craig's advice would be also echoed by myself. I'd probably also say ear training, because we're talking about an oral art.
Sure.
I think your scope for improvement is relative to the amount that you can hear and how much you're working on or how much experience you've had with actual listening. And once again, we said deliberate practice before, so deliberate hearing. I mean,
listening.
Really hearing, really listening. Actually, listening is the word in an active sense. So one of the dangers, I think, of the bass, and I've seen this in beginner playing. Yeah, no worries. Is it's actually an easy instrument to start off with, and that honeymoon period is really quite fun. You know.
Yeah.
And compared to trombone and violin and tabla, actually, for example, which sounds like this. When you start playing it sounds like a brick on top of another brick. Yeah. The bass actually sounds great.
Yeah. Once you've learned those 4 notes, you can do some gigs. And
you're 6 or 8 months and you're gigging. But then, as I said, you know, a couple of years down the track, and it becomes just as impossible as every other instrument. So you've got to rely on some other things at that point. Yeah.
The woodblock.
The jam block and the pedal.
Yeah, with the pedal. Do you use that on gigs, or is it more of a practice tool?
I do. In fact, it's on the album, believe it or not.
All right, cool.
Adrian and I both play woodblocks, and often in phase relationship. So it's one of the challenges we're setting ourselves in terms of internalizing rhythm. We're inspired by a particular technique in Balinese gamelan, which is called kodakan, which has interlocking patterns, which often tile. They hit every subdivision in a particular grouping.
Okay.
So we've been playing along with that, and we've been playing around with polyrhythm, of course, and regrouping, kind of like I was trying to do before with the scale pattern, with all sorts of kind of pieces. So Adam might be playing a groove like in 17 or something and putting a 5 pulse at the top, and I'll start adding a 3 as well.
So you're improvising with it as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, this is one of the things about Tripitaka is what we do, which I've never done in another band, is we collide harmonic and rhythmic forms, often spontaneously in gigs.
Yeah.
So we're developing a cueing system that says, I'm playing this form, right? Yeah. And then someone else will cue their form, and it might start at a different place, and it might be harmonic on top of that rhythmic form, and so we've got new relationships forming all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like, I don't know, if I was playing Stella by Starlight and you started playing All the Things You Are, but starting from the bridge in a different key in 5/4 instead. Yeah. Now that's terribly random.
Some things would probably sound pretty cool.
Well, yeah, you know, and
a lot of things probably not.
Yeah, and of course those languages aren't meant to sound good together. So again, we often these things are united by the fact that they're cycles, the time cycles. So they're periodic in that sense, that they use additive rhythm. So it's a consistent addition of pulse, and also that they're modal very often. Yeah.
Okay.
Not always, but
so you can avoid clashes.
Sometimes, but other times not, and that's good too.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is one of the fun things about, because then no gig is the same, because you feel like playing this, All the Things You Are in 17, and someone else starts playing I Love You in 4. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Super interesting. I get the the jam etiquette. You know, I think that idea of doing these videos and also having played in countries and cities and stuff where people don't speak English, and all you have is music is a very revealing and humbling thing to do, but it can also be some of the most rewarding.
Yeah.
Where there's no word spoken and all you're doing is just listening and reacting and then interacting.
Yeah. Well, it's a very authentic, traditional, social way of being.
But it's harder and harder. Well, I'm not sure if it's harder and harder, but it seems to be difficult to find outlets for that in our current methods of teaching and society and stuff like that.
No, I agree. It is harder. Well, certainly for me, it's harder, and certainly if you find, I guess there's other piece of advice there: is you find people that you gel with, marry them.
Musically,
Keep them in your band for as long as possible, because it's a fairly rare thing. You know, and I look at my young years as being very lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
You know, having a great unit of people again around me that would stick around for a long time. You know, the bands that I formed from like my late teens, you know, they stuck it out for a long time.
They put up with you for a while.
Yeah, we put up with each other. Yeah, and it takes those years before you can really make big gains.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's true. But I do agree. I think it is harder these days.
Yeah.
And maybe the internet again has something to do with it. But,
yeah, and you know, you're obviously, you know, a working musician and educator. Are you embracing the internet and the fact that you can have direct access to a fan in Somalia, for example?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. I mean, how to say this? I have a website. I have two websites, including Tripitaka, I suppose.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, I built another music business website when I had a company there called Sense Sound.
Yeah.
My wife taught beginner guitar, and we, you know, promoted ourselves. I ran a concert series, and I put it through the website, and I put on musicians, and was an quasi agent type, you know.
Yeah.
The internet's been a fantastic tool for all of that.
Yeah.
But I've also seen a diminishing live scene for the music that, you know, I'm interested in, that I play.
Yeah.
And
in Melbourne, or kind of?
Well, I think it's everywhere, because you know, I went back to Boston, you know, 10 years after, and I saw a decline there.
Yeah.
I think it's everywhere.
I think so too.
Yeah. So there's definitely been a change. Technology generally has empowered people a lot, but also I think has caused a lot of confusion between kind of just dissemination of knowledge. Like, you can download everything, right? You can have your entire library right there, and download another one tomorrow, you know. Yet it doesn't translate, you know, from that just stream of information to actual experience, you know. And that's a social experience as well as a musical experience, you know. So no, I think it is shaping the way we communicate, the way we address education. Of course, also promotion and I'm sure there's bands out there that exist solely on YouTube, probably. You know.
I don't know if you've come across Wolfbeck in your.
Wolfbeck?
Yeah. No. So they're an American band who have kind of come to prominence by making videos. But they're phenomenal musicians and the music is great. But initially the idea was they were a studio band and they just put some videos up there, kind of thing. But as a result of that, now they're touring to live audiences.
Great.
You know? The demand has grown.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's a way of reaching your niche fan base.
Yeah, right.
I think, you know, even Snarky Puppy to some extent,
right.
the live filming of their album, Tell Your Friends, that was what kind of really broke them to the broader audience and stuff like that. So it's a double-edged sword, I think.
Yeah.
You know, or it can be used for with great power comes great responsibility. I guess that kind of thing. You know,
Yes.
like it can be the way to reach your audience and grow your career, but I don't think it should be anybody's initial focus. Like these bands had been at it for 10 years, years and years until, you know, and then it was just like everything kind of lined up and that was it. You know, I'm sure other bands who've been doing videos and stuff, and then it was a gig that set them off onto this trajectory. But I think
it's a success story. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a success story. I think it's definitely something that the younger generation coming through are going to be, you know, it's going to be second nature to them. You know, live streaming on Facebook and Instagram and all this kind of stuff. It's an interesting time, but yeah, like you say, it doesn't make up for the fact that you still have to have, you know, just because you have the information doesn't mean you have the knowledge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you know, I held up my CD before. I don't know how many of your audiences actually own a CD player. You know, this is. You have one?
But I had.
Oh yeah, you've got external. Yeah,
several.
This is a thing because, you know, everyone's listening on their phones these days.
Cars don't have CD players.
The old ones do, I suppose, but the new MacBooks don't.
Yeah. Not for a long
so
time.
this is.
Is that available as a download? Digital?
It is Bandcamp. Of course. So,
which is great.
Bandcamp is great. Yeah, Bandcamp is great, and it's a completely viable way. You can download full quality, not just MP3s, but full quality AAC files, whatever,
and artwork and whatever else you want to give your fans.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a fine way, and it avoids Australia Post. You know?
But it also gives you, you know, everybody who buys it, you get their email address.
Yeah, that's
essentially.
Right.
So you collate a database of people who go, I like what you do.
Yes.
And then
they can follow you and you can promote the next one.
Exactly. Next time you send an email, and like, hey, new album. Oh, cool. Straight to that person's inbox.
Yeah, that's a very powerful thing once again. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, interesting. Anyway, man, I reckon don't want to keep you much longer. I know it's a beautiful day outside.
It is beautiful.
And
it is
things
great.
to do, but that was fantastic.
Yeah. Shall I play a song out?
Please do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We got time?
Absolutely.
Okay. A quick lullaby. Must be bedtime where you guys are.
Beautiful, man.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Lovely. That was great. Guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.